Castellan Garen Crow is a champion of the Purifier Order within the Grey Knights chapter of the Adeptus Astartes. As a Purifier, Garen Crow's very presence and abilities are an anathema to the demonic entities of the Warp, and is said to be completely incorruptible by the powers of chaos. During the purging of the Sandava system, Crow would eventually take up a role known as the Warden of the Blade, a role originally borne by Castellan Gavilan, before Gavilan fell during a confrontation with the demonic hordes of the Chaos God Slaanesh. The blade that Garen Crow has since become the Warden of is known as the Blade of Antwyr. The Blade of Antwyr was so named due to its initial discovery within the Temple of Antwyr, which was dedicated to the worship of a savage god, and was presumably known to its worshippers simply as Antwyr. This ebony blade, however, is no mere sword, but is in fact a demonic weapon containing the essence of a Neverborn within its corporeal form, and in this form the blade is seemingly indestructible, despite the chapter's best efforts to destroy or purify the entity within it. The blade corrupts and manipulates those who are too weak-willed to resist its promises of power and glory, before it eventually consumes and destroys the soul of its wielder. The Blade of Antwyr is arguably one of the most potent and dangerous artifacts within the possession of the Grey Knights chapter, for not even these stalwart defenders against the forces of chaos can resist the whispers and taunts of the blade forever. Because of this, whoever bears the honour of Warden of the Blade isolates themselves, and in turn the sword, from the other members of the chapter, only associating with their battle brothers when he is needed, such as upon the field of battle. But this time in isolation is not wasted. While the sword will continue to spit its curses and taunts at its jailer, the Warden will record the demonic blade's words onto vast rolls of parchment, so that they can be examined and scrutinized for any potential clues towards the demon's own weaknesses, or for any other pieces of forbidden knowledge that may be hidden within the entity's words. But one question remains unanswered about the Blade of Antwyr. Just what kind of demonic entity is bound within its physical form? Given the power held within the blade, it would be easy to assume that the entity bound within it would be some kind of greater demon, as such beings are known to have their essence bonded to various examples of demonic blades. For instance, contained within the weapons known as the Axes of Khorne are the raging spirits of bloodthirsters, greater demons of the chaos god Khorne, the god of bloodshed and murder. Initially it would appear that the demon within the Blade of Antwyr could be a demon of Khorne, due to the blade's frequent calls for its jailer to spill the blood of mortals, as well as offering strength and power in exchange to them submitting to the blade. In addition, the Blade of Antwyr seems to show a particular hatred towards demons of Slaanesh, the chaos god of pleasure and excess, as demonstrated with the following quote from the novel Warden of the Blade.
Manai Salat, pretender, wretch of Slaanesh, I will cleave you where you stand.
Even Garen Crow himself would note that the Blade's hatred towards the Keeper of Secrets Menasalath was indeed genuine, even if such hatred was intended to make Crow submit to the power of the Blade. While the Chaos Gods are known to make temporary alliances with one another to coincide with events within their great game, there are also deep-rooted enmities between them. Tzeentch and Nurgle are adversaries due to the gods being diametric opposites, with Tzeentch representing the concept of unending change and Nurgle symbolizing stagnation. Khorne and Slaanesh are also bitter rivals, with Slaanesh's philosophy of an unending, pleasurable existence being at odds with the Khornate beliefs of death and slaughter. But given how the Blade of Antwyr has also been documented as attempting to manipulate its wielder, there is a possibility that the demon within the blade could be a demon of Tzeentch, who is known for his deceitful and manipulative nature. As such, an entity such as a Lord of Change, for instance, would therefore also seem like a logical choice in regards to the identity of the Antwyr demon. However, there is also the distinct possibility that the demon within the blade is something else entirely. One likelihood is that Antwyr is in fact a demon of chaos undivided, that was birthed as a result of an event of major significance taking place, such as one of the earliest acts of violence or similar such occurrences. This in itself is not outside the realms of possibility, as there have been known instances of exceptionally powerful demons being created in this way. One of the most notorious in this regard is the demon Draknien. Draknien was created as a consequence of humanity as a species committing its very first act of premeditated murder. This resulted in the creation of a demonic entity so powerful and so relentless that not even the Emperor of Mankind, who personally battled against Draknien during the war within the Webway, could destroy it. Much like Antwyr, Draknien would become bound within the form of a sword before it would, many centuries later, eventually make its way into the hands of Abaddon the Despoiler, becoming his own personal blade and a symbol of his status as War Master of Chaos. In a similar manner to Draknien, perhaps Antwyr itself was also created in a comparable manner, perhaps as a result of another race committing its first action of murder, or perhaps through some other heinous act entirely. Despite this, some within the Grey Knights speculate that the entity within the Blade of Antwyr is a being substantially more potent than a mere greater demon or demon prince, and could very well be the surviving piece of a shattered ancient god. The possibility of Antwyr itself being a god is also minutely supported by a particular quote from the Blade of Antwyr itself within the 7th edition Grey Knight Codex, where it was specifically named as Antwyr, the Sword God.
I am the power of death incarnate. I am the sword's edge. I hungrily cut the flesh and drink deep of the bloody well beneath. Give me your body, and I promise you glory. I promise you vengeance, and I promise you immortality. If you will only let me.
There are multiple entities within the warp that can be classified as minor chaos gods, and some take a greater interest to events occurring within other universes than those unfurling within the one that the Imperium of Man itself exists in. As the June 2018 edition of White Dwarf magazine has recently reaffirmed, the Chaos Gods are what can be described as multiversal singularities, meaning that there is a singular example of that particular entity that exists across all realities. Slaanesh would be birthed through the hedonistic actions of the ancient Eldari Empire, but would eventually cross dimensional barriers in order to make their presence known within the universe of Warhammer Fantasy and Age of Sigmar. Tzeentch was also shown to have made his presence known within the Dark Future universe, as a church dedicated to the God of Change has also been shown to exist. As such, it's possible that the being within the Blade of Antwyr could be the bound essence of one of these minor gods that have been far more active upon another plane of reality. Given the more cornate traits that have been demonstrated by the Blade of Antwyr, there is even a possibility that, in this regard, the entity within the blade could very well be a shard or perhaps even the entirety of the minor chaos god known as Hashut. Hashut was the patron deity of the Chaos Dwarves upon the world that was, and was described as being a chaos god that personifies fire, hatred, tyranny, and rage, and has been known to have demanded sacrifices of flesh and blood from his followers in exchange for the promise of power. While described as a minor chaos god, some have speculated that Hashut could instead simply be an exceptionally powerful demon. However, the fact that Hashut had his own demonic minions, known as Kadei Fireborn, would seem to support the notion that Hashut is indeed a godly being. While the fate of Hashut following the events of the End Times is currently unknown, some believe that Hashut was destroyed by the Orc gods of Gork and Mork due to the Orcs ransacking and destroying the Chaos Dwarf capital city of Zarnagrund, though Hashut's fate in this regard is purely speculative and thus should be taken with a pinch of salt. Seeing as how Slaanesh has proven that the Chaos Gods can use the warp to move between universes and perform various actions with the multiple realms of reality, then perhaps Hashut did the same thing following the destruction of his worshippers in order to find fresh feeding grounds of mortal souls to satisfy his hunger, only to end up being bound to the Blade of Antwyr in the process. Seeing as the Blade of Antwyr itself is said to be indestructible, then perhaps this is due to the fact that the blade itself does not contain a mere demon, but instead a minor god, hence making it too powerful for mere mortals to destroy. But then again, due to the blade taunting Garen Crow about how the Grey Knight will eventually serve the Dark Gods, it seems more likely that the entity within the blade may be something else entirely, unless the Blade of Antwyr was including itself as being one of these Dark Gods. What do you think is bound within the Blade of Antwyr? Leave a comment below, and thanks for watching.